Welcome back to the Two More Casts podcast, where we cover Pacific Northwest bass fishing tournaments and fishermen podcasts, recaps, kayak, boat, tiny boat. We got it all. Today we're going to interview Preston Smith, who's actually from the Washington Tiny Boat Nation. He's got a lot to say, a lot of good information. If you're interested in joining these tournaments, man, it's kind of an idea of how to go about that. These tiny boats are really neat, actually. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. How'd you get into bass fishing?
My buddy bought a boat, like a 14-foot, just a V-hole boat, and we would go around. And his name's Sean Roche on Instagram, Fish on Reels. We'd go around and troll for trout. And then one day this is like 3 years ago now. He's like, dude, there's this like bass tournament, and we had caught like maybe a couple bass here and there, but I don't think I had caught one, but he had caught a couple bass here and there. So I was like, yeah, dude, let's do it. So we found the club online, Washington Tiny Boat Nation. And this is 3 years ago. We did an open. I think it was a Lake Stevens Open 3 years ago. I brought my Walmart rod out there and caught my first bass that day. And then we've been hooked ever since. So about 3 years ago.
That's awesome. So have you been fishing the Tiny Boat Nation for that long as well, like the whole entire time?
Yeah, we did. So that year we did the next open, which was Lake Taps. And then, so we just did two tournaments. That was 3 years ago. And then 2 years ago, we did the whole season. And then again, last year, the whole season. So this is actually my fourth year, actually. So we did two opens 3.5 years ago. And then we did two full seasons. And then now we're halfway through my fourth season with WTBN.
Very cool. So what is like what are the rules, like what are the standards to get into the Tiny Boat Nation tournaments? Like how long can your boat be? And
Right. So it's pretty unique. It used to be, I believe, 15-foot boats and 25 horsepower motor restrictions. They've changed it a couple years ago. Now it's 16-foot boats and 25 horsepower. So you can have a 16-foot boat and a maximum 25 horsepower motor. We have had some guys with bigger motors do tournaments, but in that case, they still have to have a 16-foot boat, but they don't use their motor. They bag their motor or don't use it at all. So
crazy. How many people usually show up, would you say?
Anywhere between a minimum of like 15 boats to we've maxed out a couple times now on 35 boats. So we fished a lot of the smaller lakes, and Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife has a boat limit per like acreage. They have an equation. So we'll apply for a permit. They tell us how many boats we can have. So like Lake Terrell up north, you can only have 20 boats on that lake. Up near Bellingham, bigger lakes like Stevens, American, we can get 30, 35 boats. So we typically in our opens will have 30 to 35 boats. But the smaller lakes will land somewhere between 15 and 20, which those ones are usually for members only. So
very cool. So is it like are they all team events, 2-man teams?
Yep. 2-man team, 3 fish limit. And up until recently, we did live wells, or we get a number in the morning and you can weigh your fish on video. There's a very specific criteria on how you weigh the fish on video. You get a number that they give out that morning, so you only know it for that day. You use a regulation scale that is checked at the beginning of the tournament. They use the weight to check the scales. And then you do a video where you show 0. You turn it, show 0, weigh the fish, you show the whole fish, top, bottom, and then you wait till the scale locks on hold, and it's got to hold for like 3-4 seconds, and then that will be an acceptable video. They do a good job being pretty stern on the videos, making sure you get them right. Otherwise, the fish won't qualify, or that fish will be disqualified. So that's how we weigh them now. Up until a couple weeks ago, they did allow live wells as well, so they'll weigh them at the end. But recently we had some people that had some fish didn't survive, and it had been like the second or third time for these particular people. So instead of necessarily punishing them, They just said, you know what, we don't need to do live wells anymore. Let's just do only scales. So this Moses Lake tournament was our first one where they did only scale weight and no live well.
Cool. How do you think it went? Like, for did everybody else agree with it too? Like how it went down? And
Yeah, so most of us, I would say 80% of the field usually just does the scale anyway, especially during like bed season too, because we want to get them right back. So there was like no pushback at all, as far as I knew, as far as the change, and especially when it's hot out like this, and we don't have these big professional bass boats with like legit actual live wells. Like a lot of us just put a pump in a cooler and some ice bottles in there and some G juice, and like it does pretty well, but they're not as efficient and healthy for the fish as some of these bigger boats, especially when it's like hot out like this. So nobody pushed back really at all as far as changing to scales only.
it's awesome. How fast do those 25 motors go on those 20?
It depends. Our average top speed is probably around 22 miles per hour. There's a boat I think that does around, with two people, around like 28, 29. My boat, which I use a couple times a year because my partner has a newer boat. Sean has a better boat than mine. It's just newer and a little more upgraded. My boat does about 27 with two people, 26, depending, when the motor's hot and going good. But typically guys are going, like Sean's boat will go 22, 23 with two of us in there.
Cool. Are you guys doing like shotgun starts?
Yeah, exactly. So we just do a countdown after everybody checks in, gets out on the water. They do, Austin, who's the president now, just does like, basic safety rules, reminders of the club rules, lets everybody know to be safe, and then do a 3, 2, 1, send it. Oftentimes, most tournaments, we do the national anthem too, which has been pretty cool. That was new halfway through last year. We started doing that. So we'll do the national anthem, and then we just send it. And we try to use a launch that has a big open area so guys aren't running into each other. But yeah, it's pretty awesome to watch 20, 30 tiny boats take off, race into the spots, right?
I bet it is awesome. Any videos of it?
You know what, there is. I'll have to shoot you some. I have some myself. I think there's a couple deep in my Instagram, but I have a bunch saved. But it's pretty sweet, dude. It's the most chaotic one was probably 2 years ago at American Lake. We've since moved outside of that initial cove at the Fish and Wildlife launch there in Lakewood. But 1 year, I think it was 3 years ago, we all started like in that cove, and it was chaos, dude. And it was windy that day, so I mean that's a good time. And we have some really smart guys that are really good with their boats, so nothing crazy happened. But definitely some people that are pretty close to each other, and some people that have the slower boats will get left in a bunch of waves, and they'll have to like jump over them. It's pretty badass.
That sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's good times.
I was looking at some picture of these boats. It's pretty DIY oriented. Do you have to like inspect these things like every time people get on the water? Or?
Yeah, so especially when we had live wells, they would check the live wells. Make sure with our club you can use no live bait, obviously. Make sure you obviously don't have fish already in your live well. But we're a very tight-knit club too as well. So when you're new and you fish your first couple tournaments, the now president Austin, or when I was president last year, will definitely inspect a lot closer, because you just never know with people, right? We haven't had any issues that we know of with people like cheating or anything in our club, but a lot of the builds in our club, almost every single one is a do-it-yourself, or they bought one that was already completely built out. So a lot of these boats start out as John boats that are empty, or just the V hulls that are empty, and then guys put decks in them and deck them out pretty sweet. So there's some pretty sweet boats in our club.
Yeah, the picture looks really cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, dude.
The DIY part is kind of what got me into kayak fishing, was just being able to build kind of what I wanted.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. My boat, when I got it, I brought it from one of my friends, Omar, and it was already built. And then I went hard with it. I probably was out literally over 200 times over the last year and a half. So I just had to put a new deck in it a year and a half later. And I would say it's almost easy if you already have a frame. The hardest part is doing the frame. But the actual TBN, the national company, if it's unrelated to Washington Tiny Boat Nation, they build kits for almost every size boat that you can buy the frame and stuff like that. But a lot of guys build their own frame and do their own type of thing. If you know what you're doing as far as like carpentry and stuff like that, it's doable and it's a fun project, something you can be proud of when you're done. So it's pretty cool.
For sure. So you guys aren't affiliated with that YouTube channel, the Tiny Boat Nation?
Nope. I believe so. The club started, I think it was 6 years ago, by a guy named Dakota. He's still a really good bass fisherman. He does mostly salmon fishing now, but I believe the inspiration came from that.
Okay.
I'm quite certain that it did come from that because I know those guys. We follow them and stuff. And I'm not sure if we've ever affiliated with them in any way, but I know in some way it definitely helps push people towards them. I'm sure people have found us and then found TBN afterwards, or vice versa. So it's it's an indirect collaboration, I would say, but we don't have any direct affiliation with them.
Is your club still growing, would you say? Like every year, every tournament, you're getting more and more people?
It depends. So we have a smaller, tight-knit group, and it's mostly because of those boat limitations we have. Last year, when I was president and the vice president was Brandon, the beginning of the year, we promoted all over. Like we did featured angler of the month. We made these like epic edits after like each tournament. And so what happened is by our third tournament, we started having to turn people away because we only have, for example, I think it was Lake Stevens last year, 35 boats. We had 35 registrations, before the week of the tournament. So we had to, a couple people end up backing out. So we were able to add a couple people, but I think there was 1 or 2 boats we had to turn down. So once we figured that out, our type of promotion is just the good old fashioned word of mouth. They don't do as many Instagram type promotions anymore because, again, we can only have so many anglers per lake. But it's a pretty widespread. Everyone who tournament fishes has heard of or knows of Washington Tiny Boat Nation. So we don't have a hard time at least filling the spots that we do have. So we're kind of, to answer your question, we're not really growing. We're kind of trying to stay in that sweet spot. There's several people that transition out and do the bigger clubs or get bigger boats. And then new people come in every year, so it stays about the same size. So Adrian and Cody McKenna, now they're doing TBF and the ABA. So they have, I think, fished with us for 1 tournament. But situations like that where people will move up to bigger clubs and use us as kind of a test your skills and learn tournament fishing is really what, part of the reason people join the Washington Tiny Boat Nation.
Awesome. That all makes sense too. Yeah. You don't want to get too big. All the rules on these lakes.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were the president, you said, last year?
Yeah, last year it kind of happened last minute, but essentially the president before me, his name was Bo. He's an awesome guy, and he had a kid, and his life just started getting busy. So end of the season, 2 years ago, he was just like, hey, guys, I'm transitioning out. If anyone wants to be president, let me know. And then, it went quiet, the chat, because we have a group chat that we do every year. The group chat went quiet. Nobody said anything. I'm, in my second year of fishing. At this point, I wasn't, talent-wise, where I'm at now, but my passion and love for the sport was, there. And I joined this club. My second year of the club was, right around the same time, I quit drinking and was going through, a difficult season of life. So the club meant so much to me. And it had looked like at the time, if nobody took it over, he'd even said, if no one's willing to take it over, we might shut it down. So about a week later, I messaged him, and I was like, I would do it if you need somebody. So then he ran it by the club in the chat. Everybody was like, yeah, Preston, you can do it. And then so that's how I ended up doing that. It was unexpected, but it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of help. I recruited the 2022 Angler of the Year, Brandon Glatt, to be the vice president, because I know he does a lot of tournament. He fishes in other leagues too. He knows a lot of the guys. He knows tournament fishing. And then my other friend Cruz was kind of our tournament director. So there was three of us, and without them, I didn't really know what I was doing. But there's a whole process. We had to go and get permits for new lakes and make sure you're turning in your Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife fish reporting forms. All this stuff. So it was a lot. Long story short, it was a lot of fun, and I made a lot of close friends throughout that process. So, as we get older, we don't talk to a lot of our like high school buddies, right? So most of my friends are fishing buddies now, and a lot of them I met at this club. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome for sure. I think the fishing community in every club is kind of like they've been tight knit groups.
I was surprised, pleasantly surprised when I came into it's a little bit intimidating. Like when we're at those opens 3.5, 4 years ago, and we didn't know anybody. And you got guys there at the time, like you got Dakota, you got Frank Hedlund fishing there, and you got all these guys. So it's a little bit intimidating. But once they realize that you really just love fishing, they're really accepting. Like the whole group of guys, everybody in the club, even now, I was very surprised. Out of all the communities I've been a part of in life, this is one of the most accepting. The people share knowledge, like it. I can't overemphasize like how cool the fishing community has been. Or even if you see someone else on the lake you don't even know, like that part of it, when I fell in love with fishing, I didn't really expect. I was just like taken back by how like cool everybody was in the fishing community, specifically the bass fishing community. So
for sure, and you hear a lot of the opposite on like Facebook, but everybody that's like fishing, we all have the same kind of story. We'll share information and ideas, and maybe not exact spots, but places.
Yeah, I think it comes down to this. Like, I would never ask some of like the better fishermen, especially those really talented swimbait guys, where their spots are. And I think there is a small part of the community that some of the OGs, the original gangsters, get annoyed with. Because like they'll try to find out so hard where their spot is, and they'll show up there. They'll drive like an hour to go to this spot. And like the guys that have been fishing a really long time in Washington, the bass community, are very, very, very cool guys. But it takes time to earn their respect. It takes time to earn their trust. And definitely don't go fishing their spots. Definitely don't. If you see them at a lake, don't go name dropping that lake. So there is that line you can cross. It's just like some people I think that are new are naive, but the better you get at fishing, honestly, and the more knowledgeable you get and you can show, then the more respect you get. So it's these people that don't know how to fish, that want to drive across the state to go blow up a lake, that those are the guys that you hear about on Facebook that are unliked and stuff like that.
Right. It's very true. So we're getting into the tournament season. It started March 16th at Lake Terrell. Did you participate in that one?
We did. That one was pretty awesome. This year's set of lakes was voted on by last year's club. The dates and the order of everything was chosen by myself, Brandon, and Cruz. And we chose Lake Terrell first because it's shallow. And our theory was end up being not as good as we thought because it's also up north, right, which warms up faster. We thought the shallow lakes, not all the time, but most of the time they'll turn a little faster, and you can at least find them, right? You're not having to find these 20, 30-foot ledges and stuff like that. It's a small lake, so we knew everybody would find fish. It turned out being a good tournament. Sean and I took second place, and it was a really, really tough day for most everyone. I don't remember what we got. I think it was around 10 pounds only for 3 fish to take second place. So it was tough, but a lot of the guys, especially the guys that are really good, they don't mind those tougher tournaments because it really challenges you. Like we had 1 fish, I think, until like noon.
Wow.
So it was a tough tournament. The first one, like there's a lot of reeds and isolated reed, like little islands there, maybe like 5 or 6 different ones. There's this one small one. If you do know Terrell, if you know Terrell, every single person knows this really small weed patch. It's like on the left, kind of out in the middle, but more towards the left. So Sean threw a chatterbait right at that, and it didn't swim it, didn't let it drop to the bottom. It just, this is like 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, just ate it right off the bat. And I think that was our biggest fish. It was like almost 4 pounds. And then we didn't get a bite until like 12 after that. Literally not a bite. And most people experienced the same thing. Most of the fish were caught in the afternoon at that tournament as the temperatures warmed up. We ended up getting our second 2 fish on a shaky head. So we were actually beating this bank line, and I bet a lot of people do this, beating a bank line for a while. Every once in a while, you turn around and cast like that way, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I turn around, and it's a shallow lake too. So we're beating this bank line, and I turn around and cast behind us, and I ended up getting almost a 3-pounder on a shaky head, like same thing, right as it hit the water.
That's awesome.
With just a 7-inch. Actually, I believe it was a bass candy worm. There's 7-inch worm that they have. And then the third fish, I think we just got on a jig. Like, it's the last hour. We're like on our way in. So we had talked to a few people. We knew that everyone was having a tough time. So that's what's cool about being out in the water. We don't have like bass tracks. So you have no idea ever how anyone's doing, other than you'll talk to a guy or two. But we got back and we found out we were in second place, and we had lost by a couple tenths or something like that. It was that close.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. Sean and I had several top fives, and we score our angle year points off of top five. Over the last 3 years, I think we've had a handful of them, maybe 5 or 6 top fives, but we hadn't ever gotten the plaque, right? We've always been so close, and we'll pre-fish and have these amazing pre-fishing sessions, and then just hasn't all fallen together. So this year so far it's been falling together. The next one was American, and we ended up taking 4th at that one right after that. So
that was in April. Was that pre-spawn or post-spawn being April?
Dude, it was pre. I mean, you could say this every year for Washington because it's not really like the same, but this year's weather, you've probably heard this, has been strange. Mm-hmm. Even the last like 3 weeks, it was like 65. Like for the last 3 weeks, we haven't really until today hit the 80s like more than once. So it's been a weird year. So it was pre-spawn. That one was pretty awesome. It was very, very windy that day. Yeah,
not as windy as
we're in
Saturday,
tiny boats, so like as tough as it is for anybody, kayaks, tiny boats, or big boats to be in the wind, we decided at American to go right to the windblown bank, which I think a lot of tournament anglers make that mistake, is they're going to want to stay out of the wind, right? But especially pre-spawn, if you find like a rock flat with the waves crashing at it and you just go off that ledge right there on a smallie lake, that's where we got most of our fish. We just decided let's go where the wind's like the worst, which we'll get there, but that's what ended up ripping the motor off on Saturday. Ripping the motor off. We were in the windiest spot of the lake when it was like 20 miles per hour wind. Like there's white caps and we're in a 15-foot boat.
Jeez, man. What do you think it is about like the windblown banks that the fish get attracted to, get a little aggressive on?
So I'm still learning a lot about this type of stuff, but my theory and what I've heard before is during pre-spawn especially, and really all year round, they're oftentimes looking for like little bait fish. They're not always going to be chasing the trout or like, big bait. So the little bait balls, like think about how much energy those little things have. They can't have like that much energy. It takes so much energy, especially some of the bait fish around here. They don't have the air bladders, so they have to stay swimming to actually survive. So I think a lot of the bait fish, instead of fighting the wind, they're just going to go with it, right?
Right.
Also, it's just like the the bait fish can't see as well, so they're easier ambushed, and the pressure of the water is quite different with a lot of wind, and I believe they go to that area a lot. Not all the fish, but a lot of fish go there and cruise by there just to see what bait's being pushed into there, and they'll cruise back and forth and try to see if they can get an easy meal that's like not paying attention while it's getting thrashed by wind, current, stuff like that.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
do you fish deep at American Lake? I know they got a bunch of ledges and humps.
yeah. Sean and I are not the best at fishing deep. There's a lot of really good guys. I don't know if you know who Adrian is, Cody McKenna,
I know
Austin.
those two are for sure. You're talking
A lot
about
of
Adrian
guys.
Jimenez or something?
Yeah. Yep. That's him. A lot of those guys are pretty good at fishing deep, and either they have scopes, but even without the scope, just knowing the layout of a lake and where to put your drop shot or your jig or whatever you use, those hover baits. We do it, but not like deep. So we kind of will try to find flats on a lake like that. Traditionally, most lakes, smaller lakes, your flats are going to be like 5 to 10 feet. But there's flats in American Lake that are like 20 feet, rock flats. And it's a smallie lake. So we'll try a lot of those rock flats. And that's where I caught like a 4.4 smallie there on a rock flat shortly on our way to that windblown bank that we caught most of the other ones on. But it was probably 10 feet. So, but deep, American can be one of the better lakes early pre-spawn and like late summer to like late fall, just to find them and drop a drop shot down there. But that is one of the best deep fishing lakes. We've caught them before like that, but we're not that good at it, so we don't do it very often.
Do you guys practice together, or do you practice like as individuals?
So both. I live in Tacoma. Sean lives like other side of Tacoma. I live in North Tacoma. He lives in Central Tacoma. We usually fish every Thursday somewhere, and like every other Saturday. He has kids, so he's pretty busy. He's doing a fishing tournament this weekend. Him and Brandon Glatt are doing a fishing tournament, the Washington one. So he has a wife too. Took today off to spend time with the wife, and since he's fishing this weekend. But we usually fish every Thursday. For pre-fishing, Moses Lake, we went up. Terrell, we didn't pre-fish at all. American, we pre-fished like 3-4 times. Had barely caught anything because the tournament was there, it was just when it started to turn on. I had like probably 12 hours of fishing there and maybe 3 fish for practice, but we went there maybe 3-4 weeks in a row. And then what did we do after American? What was the tournament after American Lake?
Spanaway Lake on May 11th.
That one was insane. The guys who won are really awesome guys. They're both close friends of mine, Cruz and Omar. They actually won Moses Lake too. They won Spanaway bed fishing, and dude got a 7-12 and 2-5, like 2 5s, and they culled another 5. They had, if we didn't do 5 fish for this one, if we had done 5 fish, they would have had a 26-pound bag that day.
Jeez.
And we finished that one, I think, 9th, and we had an 11-pound bag. Wow. It was just they were bed fishing, so it was like video game fishing, and there wasn't even much wind. So it's just one of those situations. There's maybe anywhere from 3 to like 15 days, a whole year where it's like this on. And we got lucky and everything lined up. And that's why Brandon and I picked this lake for the schedule at this time, because that's one of my home lakes. That's 20 minutes away. And I knew if we can time it right, it's going to be insane.
And
there was over, I think, 12 people who had over 10-pound 3-fish bags. So like all 3-pounders. And that was freaking sweet. So they had that crazy bag. Sean and I, you come in, you don't know how well you did. And we're like, most Washington TBN tournaments, you're going to be top 5 to like 7 if you get a 10-pound bag. That's 3 3-pounders. northern strain, like it's usually like you're gonna be up there. We've even had people that win tournaments with, I think the Terrell, I think the guys won with like a 11 and a half pounds. So like we've had tournaments in the past, like Powassan last year, where people win with 10 pounds. So we're coming in with 10. We're just trying to get in the points. Again, top 5 get Angler of the Year points. At this point, Sean and I are like 3rd and 4th in Angler of the Year points. So we come in with a 10-pound bag, and literally everyone had a 10-pound bag. And it was just like a fun day for everyone to see everyone go out there. And also a day that it was not easy either, because you know how bed fishing is. If you know bed fishing, they can be tough as hell. And I'm trying to learn more and more how to use the swim baits and the glides, because some of the best fishermen I know can catch the highest quality of fish on those. And this day I ended up catching all my fish on a little S-Waver glide. And it's one that had a custom paint job painted black. And so I think I caught one other fish, I think on a wacky, but these fish are really stubborn. They would just go up and touch it. So I would swim this little glide by like a couple times, once really slow, once really fast. And then I had a slow sinking glide. So I'd put it right over. Eventually, if you fish a bed enough, you learn their spot. They actually have like a fifth. If you see the whole bed, there's like a fifth of it somewhere that they hate it when there's something there. There's like a specific spot. I don't know if it's where they plan on like laying their eggs or what it is about it. So I would get them to see it a couple times, and then I would lay it down. It would lay flat like this, and they would nose up to it, and I would kind of whip it a little bit, and that thing would turn up and go like this. And then they would just grab it, dude. It was pretty sweet. For someone who doesn't catch too many swim bait or glide bait fish, to catch bed fish on that. I had seen a couple people online last year catching bed fish with swim baits and glide baits, and I was like, I couldn't imagine that happening, because when they grab it on a bed, they're usually like, they just barely grab it. So a lot of guys use nets or just really small jigs, but if you really piss them off, they're going to eat whatever that is. So that was, I've always wanted to have one of them hard swim baits that has bite marks everywhere, literally everywhere. And at the end of the day, I had that one, and that thing was sweet. I fished with it every time for like the next like 6-7 times I was out, and I caught 2 more nice fish on it over the last couple of weeks, and it recently broke. So I'm going to get another one of those. I think they're only $20. Don't remember who makes them, but if you just type in S-Waver, they're little glides, and they're pretty sweet.
I'll have to look at that. I've never heard of that before, bed fishing for fish with a glide bait. That's cool, though.
Yeah, they nose up to it, and like usually that's how you get a bed fish to bite. They'll nose up to it, and you like twitch it, right? And they'll just grab it. So this one, when you twitch a small glide bait, it turns like this, it goes like that.
That's crazy.
So it really pisses them off, too. So
that's such a good idea. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Sean
even hooked one on one of those little soft gillies, doing the same thing, laying the little gilly on like just almost like a bigger version of a wacky hook, just by the nose, and laying it on their bed, and then he whipped that, and that thing would go like this.
Interesting.
But, yeah, it was a pretty sweet day. That's long story short. Spanaway that's an amazing lake. I don't really go there much because like it's kind of a weird thing I have, but somebody caught a giant fish there this year. You probably heard about it, but I'd rather not talk about it. Somebody caught a good fish there, and since then it's been just hammered. Like I went there once before the tournament, and there was like 30. It's a smaller lake. There's like 30 boats on there. So I haven't really been there since the tournament, because I'm just waiting for this year to pass so people chill out on it. But it's kind of like overfished this year, so I'm gonna leave it be.
For sure. Spanaway Lake. I fished that a couple years ago. I haven't fished it lately.
Years ago, in the early 90s, it was commonly known as the best lake in Washington, and it's all right. It's not easy. Everybody thinks they can go there right now and just catch a giant. It's not the case. It gets really tough. Outside of spawn season, it gets really, really tough. You can go there all day and not get a bite. So that's why I think the pressure is dying down a little bit, because people go there that don't know what they're doing, or they do and they just don't catch a fish. And so I'll have to check it out here in the next couple of weeks and see what the pressure is like. But literally the second closest lake to my house. and I just don't go there because I don't like to go be an additional hammer on pressured lakes.
Right. Me either. That makes sense too.
Yeah.
And then, so that brings us to Moses Lake, which is this weekend. Did you guys have to deal with that wind too, you said?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Forecast like going 10 days back. As soon as the 10-day forecast comes out, we're all looking, right? And it said like 17. And then up until the day of, the current president, Austin, is considering, rightfully so, canceling it or not canceling it. And when we, looked at it, the first 2-3 hours was only going to be like 11, 12 mile per hour, which that's still bad, but it's like completely fishable. And some would say really good fishing conditions too, especially if you're using, some moving baits and stuff like that. So we just sended it. We went up there a day early. Sean and I left Thursday night and we pre-fished all day Friday. And we found this rock flat there. Literally in 15 minutes, we caught like a 12-pound 3-fish bag. I think it was a little bit less than that, like 11. And then we caught a fourth fish that was around 3 pounds. And so we just left. We're like, hey, this is where we're going to start in the morning. This spot's sweet. Like the quality of fish was there. One was like almost a 4 and then a couple 3s and another 3. And this is like literally in 15 minutes time. So basically we went there in the morning. And this is funny because I've heard this happen to other people. And the bite was on, right? But the fish literally shrunk. It was like we caught 2 there, 1.5 pounds. And then I ended up catching one kind of close to that area up against some reeds with a walking bait, which ended up being like, I'll get there. Walking bait ended up being crazy for us. But I caught like a 2.6. So we came in at the end of the day with 5.5. But by 8:30, Sean and I were like pushed up in the reeds. He's got all his tools out trying to reattach his motor because there's a thin aluminum plate that kind of holds. It's not too thin. It's like thick enough to where it's usually completely fine. Holds his trolling motor on the front. And where we were fishing in that spot, we went to another spot and then came back to see if maybe the bigger ones pushed in about 8 o'clock. And this is like the absolute pinnacle of where the wind is pushing. Like literally, if you look at a map, it said west southwest. We're like in the west southwest direction. Nose of the boat going the other way. He's keeping the troll motor on like 40% just to keep us in the same spot. And while he's on it, wave comes crash and just like the force ripped the bolt straight out of that aluminum piece. And he had 4 bolts on the time, which we fixed it that night. He put 6 later, but it left 1 bolt in and he literally caught it. Or it would have been, his troll motor would have been in the water. It would have ripped that other boat out. But he caught it. He told me, hey, motor up. We got to pull out. And then so about 8:15, 8:30, we were done for the day. And then we tried to fix it ourselves. And we messaged the chat about 9 o'clock and was like, hey, has anybody got any washers? Because the holes now were too big to fit the original boat. Nobody had any washers. And then so we pulled off on a launch. We're like a 45-minute tiny boat ride away from the launch that we came from. We went to the other side of Moses Lake completely. So we had a buddy staying at our campsite with us, one of our close friends, pulling off at the Blue Herring launch, which was nearby where we had lost the troll motor. And instead of in the waves, because when we're going in the motors, everyone experiences too. We're going to head back. And I'm like, the tiny boats are very rough, obviously, especially in that stuff. But I was in the front, which is where I usually ride to kind of balance out the boat, help it get on plane. But I'm in the front. He's driving. I'm in the front holding the motor down. Like I'm sitting on my knees holding the motor down and getting completely drenched by waves.
Oh, my gosh.
Completely. And he was soaked too. And everybody ended up being soaked because the waves would come like over the sides. So we're like, dude, we're going to either do this and like my back and my whole body started to hurt too. And like, it was just rough. So we went maybe like a 10-minute ride and then we looked at each other. There was a launch right there. We're like, hey, we're pulling off. We're calling our buddy. We're going to have him go pick Sean up, grab the trailer. We're pulling out, calling it a day here. Luckily for us, they ended up calling off the whole tournament like an hour and a half, 2 hours later. And another guy, Ron Johnson, pulled off at that launch too, because him and his girl that were fishing together were just getting completely drenched. And they were also 45 minutes away. So my buddy came and picked up Sean and Ron, and then me and Ron's girl, Mariah, stayed there and watched the boats as they're tied up to the dock, going crazy as they went and got the trailers and pulled out. And so we had ended with only 5.5 pounds, 3 fish limit on day 1. And we thought, dude, maybe nobody got on them this morning. It was like pretty wild, but it ended up being like first place because they kept scores for each day and then they combined them. First place had like 11 pounds. Second place had 10. There was someone with 9 and like 2 people with 8 and a bunch of people with like 6. Like people had got on them. So we were sitting in 9th place with a broken boat motor. So we went to Sean ended up getting some washers and fixing his motor that night. That Austin announces at the end, Austin, the current president, hey, we've never done this before, but since like today was canceled, tomorrow it's supposed to be like almost no wind. We're going to do a 5-fish bag on Sunday, which we've never done. And we're going to do an extra hour, which we do sometimes, especially when it gets light early, like it has been. So then Sunday, Sean and I are like, all right, like we're not too optimistic because we're in 9th and the people that fish with us are really good. But we ended up going to potholes, slaying a couple frogfish, and then went to bed. If you're staying, we launched in Crab Creek, and we probably got like 10 blowups and put like 4 fish in the boat on frogs that night, on Saturday night, just to kind of get our morale back up, right?
Oh yeah.
And then Sunday morning, we got out in the water a little sooner because we didn't have to do all the boat checks and sign all the forms. So we just got out there, launched, and we made a decision together. We're going to stay like closer so we can start fishing earlier, because the morning bite window during tournament season this time of year is so crucial. It's like it might be your only chance at times to get like a quality bag. Not all the time, but sometimes, and you just never know. So we decided we're going to stay on the main lake because it's post-spawn in Moses Lake. So a lot of them are pushed out back to like, headed out to their summer holes or things like that. So we stayed on the main lake. So this is day 2. Sean's using like a version of a Ned rig, a little bit bigger. And we're fishing for smallies like on the main lake, kind of by the launch because we want to get started right away. And he catches a 3.7 largie on a Ned rig. And I'm like, what? That was our first fish. I'm using, and I love to use this. I got not my PB, but my second biggest fish on it as a walking bait. There's several good ones out there. There's the spook. This weekend I was using the Berkeley Jaywalker is what I was using. But they're just spears, and you either go down or up, and you can just walk them really aggressively. So I was using one of those, and I had missed like 2 fish like around the same time Sean caught this one. This at this moment is only like 6:30 in the morning. And I go to put it down. I use something for a little bit. Sean's like, dude, pick that back up. Like, you've gotten blown up twice. You just missed him. So that ended up being the best decision all weekend because we went around this corner. There was this branch, and I just ran it right next to the branch, and a 3-pound largie comes out and it was so badass, just annihilates the walking bait. Dang. And we were like drifting kind of into the shore, so it was like almost at the boat. I'm like in the back co-angler, and I'm just walking it next to this branch that's maybe like the tip of the branch is like 5 feet away from the back of the boat. And he just comes out. It was probably my favorite bite of the weekend. And then so now we got a 3.7 and a 3. We're like, sweet, dude. And so Sean like immediately, and we always do this and I love it. If one of us like catches like a badass fish or like a couple in a row, the other one will go tie up the same thing or different color of the same thing, which a lot of tournament anglers that fish in teams, they want to use something different because then they can figure out what the fish. But at this point, we're like, all right, we figured him out. That's like our 3rd blow up of the morning. And if this topwater bite's going to go on, not only will we have a chance to catch some quality fish, but no matter what, we're going to have a badass time because that's everybody's favorite bite. So Sean puts like a bone colored one on, I had like a translucent one on with like blue on the sides. I forget what it's called. And we go around this little bank line, and we literally in the next hour probably caught like 9 keepers all on topwater. It was so
Dang.
badass. So fast forward, bunch of fish later, we cull like 3-4 times. We have our 5 fish, and it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's still not stopping. Like we ended up going to another section and catching like 2 more fish on topwater. We're like, this is insane. And the topwater bite just kept coming, but we couldn't upgrade our smallest fish. Our smallest fish was a 2.8 in the bag, 2.84. So we ended up going to the other side of the lake, and then we knew we had, at this point, we had 15 pounds. Like, I think it was just over or just under 15 pounds. We had done something we never did before during a tournament. We were so like happy about our bag. We like pulled off to a calm section and like ate lunch and like reweighed all our fish and like added them all up. Like there's nothing like in a tournament when like all the pressure's off and you're
Right.
like, all right, we just need that 1 or 2 like big kicker fish. So we did that, and then about noon, like the topwater bite went till like 11:30, which we found out later everyone stopped by like 7:30 to give a topwater. But there's certain times of the year, like this time of the year, where I don't know, has to do with. I think it has to do with the other fish's spawning cycle, like bluegill spawn, trout spawn. I think in the fall, but there's different for some reason, whatever it is. There's a certain time of the year, and it's like right now where the fish are looking up a lot more, and especially in specific sections of the lake. And we happened to like key in on that to where the topwater bite did last a lot longer in winter. And luckily, like no one else picked up on it because it did die a little bit for like a half an hour. And a lot of times, if you catch a bunch of fish on topwater and it dies for a half an hour, people will just stop fishing topwater. Like, all right, topwater's over. But we got on that until like 11:30 and ended up with 15 pounds. And then Sean ties on a 6 cent sweep, which is like a 6-inch perch swim bait with red eyes, weedless. And at this point, we know we need like a home run, right? Like an absolute home run to like win because we had such little weight the day before. So I was still fishing topwater, I think, and Sean tosses this under a dock. We got pretty good at skipping those now. They bounce pretty high, so you got to kind of have the skip start really close to the dock. And skipped it under a dock, and then a 4.3 largie swallows that whole thing. It was so badass. And it
That's a
swam
good
at the
day.
boat. A lot of big fish do this. It swam at the boat so fast that he was like, oh, I missed it. And he was like, no, it's there, it's there, it's there. And then we got that in the boat, and we ended up catching a couple more small ones throughout the day, but it was like 12:30. That was our last cull of the day. And ended up with 17.1 pounds. And coming back all the way to 4th place. How we put together a decent bag on day 1 would have made a huge difference, but yeah, that was the Moses Lake tournament. It was badass.
That's impressive for sure. Do you have
Yeah.
like a setup for those walking baits? Like a rod and reel?
So I have an Abu Garcia medium heavy. I want to say it's 7 foot. So you want it pretty stiff. So like with a walking bait, that especially these ones that have 3 treble hooks, a lot of people think you want to, like a frog, you got to swing for the fences, dude. Like you absolutely do. Or especially on a jig or something like that, or that swim bait Sean was using. But like you got to like have just a stiff rod that will like, you can do a quick little pop. It's just a quick pop. So my rod's pretty stiff, and it being stiff, it walks really well. So you just, instead of using your whole arm, you can even just use the reel, like half reels, and it'll go left, right. Or I do rod tip down and just use only my wrist. And they were biting it. A lot of times, you got to figure them out on topwater. A lot of times they'll bite it only when you stop it. But on this day, we were burning those like almost as fast as we can, just ripping them through the water. So it was fun.
That is wild. You said you use a couple different brands of those walking baits, right? The 6. Oh,
Yeah. So the spook is like the most common one, and then the one I was using this weekend, which I really like, is the Berkeley Jaywalker.
okay.
But
I've heard of
yeah, it's
that one.
pretty, and they're pretty big too. There's two different sizes usually. There's like 3.5 inch ones, and there's like 5 inch ones, or they might be 4.5. I'm not sure, but we were using the bigger ones. So pretty good size bait, and it makes for an aggressive bite. Like had we not even done well at all, still a badass day. Just getting that many topwater bites in one day. I don't think that we've ever done that. Like even just pleasure fishing or anything like that. It was just an insane day.
It sounds like a crazy day. You got 4-pounders chasing plastic
Yeah.
swinging dogs.
Yeah, it was pretty wild too. Oh, and I started using a swim bait too. Bass Candy makes a swim bait. I can't remember what they call it, but they just came out with it I threw that on because I have a perch colored one, and I had what I believe people say this type of stuff all the time. What would have been like the winning fish, chase that out of some reeds. So when you're reeling a swim bait slow, right? And then you feel like you're done with your retrieve, right? And you just reel it in real fast.
Hmm.
So I was reeling it slow, like off this like structure that's in the water and a reed line, and then like I get it to where I can see my bait and it's like halfway to the boat. So I reel fast, and I swear Sean didn't even see it too, so he had to take my word for it. I saw like an 8 pounder come out of there, come right up to it, see the boat, and then turn around and swim away. So we stayed there for like a half an hour trying to get that fish. But Moses Lake absolutely has those.
Hmm.
And there's probably a couple hundred, like 7-8 pounders in that lake plus. So we saw one, and there was another guy that saw one that size too in that lake. But had we gotten lucky, had that been our day, get that 8 pounder, that might have got us enough. I mean, that probably would have got us. We did the math; it would have got us second, but the first place bag was pretty significant.
27.8 pounds, I think.
Yeah, it
That's
was pretty.
crazy.
We were at 22 and a half.
Jeez.
Or
Yeah, you're only 2 pounds
23.
out behind. Oh, you're really close to third.
Yeah, we were a pound away.
Yeah.
So, and those
That's
guys are
wild.
good. Quentin, he's an older guy, and he's just like an OG of fishing. You can just tell. But he's kind of our nemesis. He beat us at Terrell. We took second. He took first. At American, we took fourth. He took third. And then we took fourth. He took third. And they're great fishermen, cool guys to talk to. And now we've started giving each other a hard time. I was like, every time he shows up, I'm like, damn it, I was hoping he wouldn't show up today.
It's that guy.
Yeah, but those guys are some cool guys.
Yeah.
And Ian and Corey took second. They there's some cool guys, some of the nicest guys you'll meet. And Omar and Cruz are just really cool guys as well. And Omar is like one of the best fishermen in our state, in my opinion. He's just a really good fisherman, and it doesn't always show up in tournaments, but see, some people just have it like skill and luck and intuition. He's that, and then his partner Cruz is an absolute hammer as well. So they won Spanaway, then they won this one, which gives them like double points for Angle of the Year points. So I think Sean and I will be in like fifth and sixth now, coming up on Lake Stevens, which is going to be, I believe it's going to be tough because it's going to be like way post spawn. It's going to be like whatever's after post spawn before fall.
Right.
But Lake Stevens is fun if you can just punch docks and stuff, but we'll try that. But I don't think they're going to be there. I think we're going to have to fish ledges, and maybe we'll get lucky. It'll be really hot. Maybe there'll be some largies under docks. But the problem and where I was going with that is that's Cruz and Omar's home lake. So they won 2 in a row going into their home lake. So it's a pretty good situation for them.
For sure. Yeah. You gonna chase smallmouths or largies in there?
Yes. Either or. We'll probably, Sean and I are better smaller fishermen than largy fishermen, although we both like largy fishing better. But we live next to a lake that is probably the best or top 2 smallie lakes in Washington. It's one that not a lot of people know about except for like local people. And so we get a lot of practice with smallmouth. That's why if you go through my page, you'll see tons. There's probably, I don't know, 20, 30 smallies over 4 pounds there. And they're all from, most of them, except for a couple from American, are from this lake. And then even I got a 6'3" smallie I think it was 2 years ago now. That was from this lake, which that was probably my favorite catch ever. That was awesome.
How'd that
On a
one go
Ned,
down?
on a Ned rig
On a Ned rig.
for
I caught
all
my
for all the
PB on a
haters
Ned rig.
for all the haters out there. Here's a quick trick too for people listening to this that like don't like to use the Ned rig because their egos or whatever, or maybe sometimes it does catch small fish. So I've been using and I use this and caught all my fish at American on. It's called the Giant TRD, and it's like a 3.5 inch Ned rig. And then you buy a bigger hook and it's like twice the size as a regular Ned. And I use mostly that when I'm fishing smaller baits because I just finds better quality fish.
Do you prefer fishing with like an EWG or like a straight stink for your Ned rigs?
Just straight.
Straight.
Just only the straight ones. I know a lot of people that have luck otherwise, but the bigger ones especially because they have a lot more action. And there's a lot of different ways to work that. So you can let it sit, which is super boring, and a lot of people catch fish that way. But you can just walk it a little bit with your wrist. Or if it's windy, like I've caught a lot of giant fish taking that thing, letting it sit at the bottom, and then I whip it, like literally like you're doing a jerk bait, but not jerk bait should do like twice and then stop. I whip it once, wait, jerk, jerk, whip it again. Because in the wind, that thing goes flying and then it sits, and then you got to get their attention. But I'm really, really good with that bait, and I've found some confidence baits just by trial and error, and that's a good one.
For sure. I like the versatility of the Ned rig. Like you can use it almost anywhere, do different things with it.
It skips well.
Yeah.
But I mean, next time you go shopping, look for the giant ones and start using those. It'll up your quality of fish. It's a little heavier, so you can use it on a heavier weight. You can get a 1/4 ounce like jig head for it. So you can use a casting rod instead of a spinner bait, and it should up your quality of fish using the bigger one. So,
you guys got a plan for Mason Lake, or just one lake at a time? I think Mason Lake's before the championship, it looks like.
Yeah, so there's Big Lake, Mason Lake, then Big Lake, and then we do.
Was that the name of the lake?
Yeah, Big Lake. It's like up north.
Cool.
It's not even that big, too. It's really ironic. It's like kind of small. They should call it like Medium Lake or something. But so Mason Lake is very clear water. Like you can see 20. If it's no wind, you can see 20 foot down, and that is going to be middle of the summer. So no, the answer to your question is no. That one's like 40 minutes from my house, but it feels a lot further. So I don't know how many times I'll get out there, but it's probably going to be deeper off ledges, stuff like that. But we'll get out and pre-fish, and we like to find a shallow bite. We like to find a topwater bite, and we like to, regardless of winds or not, we like to fish how we like to fish. So it's likely we're going to try to get on a topwater bite. See if there's anything up shallow early, because in the middle of the summer they'll still come up to feed, and then after that just try to find brush piles, big rocks, or ledges. But that lake has smallies and largies. Mason Lake is pretty awesome.
It's huge, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's pretty big. That they should change the names from Big Lake to that one.
Call the Open Basin. And so you fished Big Lake before?
Yeah, we went there last year. I don't remember how we did. I think we did pretty good. I think we fished like six or something. But that one, the main thing I remember about that one is we caught probably more fish at that lake than any other lake, but they were all so small. And then we just didn't end up finding good ones. And then I have a big wake bait that my friend Lad made, Lad Campbell, and it's like 6-7 inches long, and it's fat, and it swims, and it knocks. It makes like that knocking noise. But I remember I caught one of our fish that made our bag was on a wake bait there, and that was freaking sick. So
that's crazy.
If I could, I would fish topwater all year, and there's people that do actually.
Really?
So this winter, stay tuned, might have to wait a while, but yeah, that's my favorite way to fish is by far. So wake baits, walking baits. I used to use a popper a lot, but it's kind of boring.
Have you used whopper ploppers at all?
I haven't. I know a lot of people who catch fish. I have one, and I remember I got it out. I bought a new one, and I was all stoked about it, and I cast a couple times, and I just like you have to reel really fast to get it to like do its thing, and it didn't feel right to me. So I just need to get more comfortable with it, I think. But I heard you get some big bites on that one because
It's
you have to make
crazy.
it go fast for it to. You can stop it too, but for it to really do its thing, you got to get it running.
Yeah, make that noise, man. It's kind of crazy too. 'Cause they hooks don't sit very well, so that thing would come flying back at you like 30 miles an hour.
Yeah,
You ain't careful.
that's that's a good time. We've luckily never hit each other. We come so close all the time. That's why I don't like being on the boat when Sean is punching.
You just kind of
Which
step
that's
back and let him do his thing, or
yeah. Which I do also wish that the next couple lakes were punching lakes, but they're not because we're coming into the best time here in about a week or two, the best time of the year to start punching. Which you can get that's some of the bigger quality fish you can get all year is doing stuff like that. But the next couple lakes they're not gonna really play out for it.
I haven't spent too much time punching. What kind of setup do you use for that? Like a thicker rod, big weight, and
Yeah, if it's some light cover, you use like a half ounce tungsten with a stopper and just something like I like to use like darker natural colors in the summer since they're like slightly less aggressive. Um, but yeah, so just really any craw will do or any really smaller plastic. A lot of people will, not a lot of people. I know some guys that will use like 7-inch worms or even they make an 11-inch worm they'll put on there. But you just the idea with that is you want them to see it, and it's got to have some action at the bottom of it when it's dropping down. But there's a crawl called the skirted grub. I think a couple different companies make it, but it's got two craws on the like pinchers on the bottom, and on the top when you drop it, it like opens up and it kind of makes almost like a jig skirt.
oh, okay.
That's great for punching. I'm not really the guy to ask because I don't have that much experience punching. But if I'm going to set up a punching rig, I'm going to put like a black and blue or dark brown craw on a 1/2 inch tungsten and just toss it in those gaps in the lilies. If you're going through some thick stuff, which a lot of people are afraid to do, but I watched a guy at a lake around here catch a 7 with like a 1-inch tungsten punching through like a mat of like weeds that were like this thick.
Jeez, man.
So they're in there because they're trying to feed but also like stay cool. So they go deep in the summer to stay cool, but they also will find cover where there's some shade. Just like you and I were on a long walk, and it's 95 degrees out. You might take a break in the shade for a little bit, especially if there's a sandwich over there. So
Oh yeah,
same type of deal. They want to get a snack and stay cool.
that makes sense too for sure. Yeah. What is your PB? Largemouth, smallmouth, whichever.
Um, Largemouth is 6 pounds, 10 ounces. But I was in North Carolina on vacation about 3 weeks ago, and I caught something that was like 25 inches. I didn't have a scale, didn't have a measure. What I did is I took a picture of it next to my rod and then measured that same rod length. But I was visiting my sister, and I found on Google Maps just like a side of the road, like medium sized, like pond, like a little bit bigger than a pond, but smaller than a lake. And I was throwing a jerk bait, and I thought I was snagged on a rock, like a lot of people's PB stories. And it ended up being a giant fish, 25 inches long. And it wasn't too fat, but I've talked to some of the guys that I trust and respect and just asked their opinion because I'm curious. And they say it was minimum like 7.5 at the smallest to a 25-inch fish when healthy is a 10 pounder or more. But this one was, I believe, smaller than 10, but higher than 8. But my official Washington Northern Strain PB, 6 pounds, 10 ounces on a chatterbait. So that was fun. And then I caught a topwater 6.9 last year also on a
Jeez.
walking bait.
Same lake?
No, two different lakes.
Different lakes.
Yeah. If you ever get down this area, hit me up. I'll take you to a couple of these. We have two of the better lakes around here, and people that were from around here know about it. And if you come down, I'll take you to them. But there's some really good lakes around here that I think we take for granted. Like I'm already bored of them, but yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I'll
So
do that for
Smalley was
sure.
6'3".
6'3". Was that
And
on
then
top water or?
that was the one that was on a Ned rig. That was on a regular Ned rig on a Walmart rod 3 years ago when I didn't know what I was doing.
That'll get you hooked.
It was maybe like my 20th smallmouth I ever caught. It was right in the beginning. And that was like, if I wasn't hooked to addicted to fishing before, that changed the game for me. I was like, yeah, I was blown away by that one.
6-pounder will do that for sure, especially early on, man. That's cool.
Yeah. Would you rather catch a 6-pound smallie, or everyone uses this analogy and says 10-pound largie, but a 6-pound smallie or an 8-pound largie?
Probably an 8-pound largie. That would break my PB. I mean, I'd be okay with both, but
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I think a little largie for sure.
Yeah, I like largies. There's something about their big ass mouth and the way they're. I think they're harder to catch. Bigger ones, it's harder. Like if you put the right bait in front of a 5-pound smallie, it's gonna eat it. A lot of 6-7 pound largies are so smart for whatever reason. Or that's what I tell myself because I don't catch them very often.
Right. I think the same way. I think the smallmouth are just more aggressive than like a big largemouth.
Absolutely.
And every big largemouth I've caught, it seems to be just on accident. Like I've casted in just these places I shouldn't be casting into. Like really,
That's how it is, dude.
coming up and eating. It's crazy.
That's the name of the game.
Like my PB is like 7.13. I actually caught it at Mason Lake underneath.
Really, the one that
dock.
was on our tournament schedule.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the one in Shelton, right? Or
Yep.
that Mason area. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see him in there because the water's clear, and you can see him cruising around like 6+.
Yeah.
But that's a really good lake too, and I think a lot of people know it's a good lake, but it's so hard to fish.
This is the only fish I caught in 3 days of fishing there in a row.
Yeah. See, that's exactly what it is. There's a guy I know that grew up on that lake that has caught a bunch of giants there, but he doesn't even go there very often because it's like the conditions, time of year, everything's got to be right. But they'll eat the swim bait there. That's probably what we're gonna, if we get our bag early at Mason, if we get even 3 2-pounders, we're probably going to be trying to see if we can get on a bite, drawing them, throwing glides on the side of docks and trying to draw them out.
That's something I need to get into, is throwing glides and bigger baits. They intimidate me still.
It feels weird, dude. Like I'm just now getting comfortable with it, and I've maybe caught, if you don't count my wake, because I've caught like 10, 15 fish on that wake actually, but regular like glides and swim baits, I've maybe caught 7, 8 fish on total, and I'm counting like the 4 I got at the Spanaway tournament. So it's pretty tough, and it takes my buddy who's a really good swim bait fisherman. His name's Joshua Stewart. He's actually he's in the military. He's on leave right now training, and it's like the fishing community when he's gone misses him because he just catches tons of giants. He almost caught a 10 last year. It was like 9.6, but the guy told me, he said, just go out. He gave me a lot of advice about swim bait fishing. Is go out and bring only that rod. There's a lot of things he said that I'll just keep in confidence because it's just a respect thing. But he said just bring only that rod. And I've still never done that, but the mindset behind it is you can't throw that swim bait 15 casts and say, oh, bite's not on, and put it down. It's the same. If you've gotten comfortable with a frog, it's the same concept. Like to go have a good day on a frog, you got to just throw the frog. And then if a half hour goes by, you don't get a bite, throw the frog again. And then you could end up over 4 hours catching, 3, 4 quality fish. It's the same mentality with the swim bait is you just can't, from what the little bit I do know, you just can't put it down. And if you know someone who fishes it all the time and does well, and you're close with, ask them questions because there's a different technique for literally every bait, from how fast you reel it, or do you even reel, at all? Are you, dragging it? Like, where do you cast it? How far? Some of these swim baits that are really popular, the guys will go and put weights in them to have them sink faster. So there's all kinds of little tricks. That's its own community in itself, and it's like I feel like there's levels to this, and that's like when those guys start to respect you, it's like, oh, okay, I'm doing good. So it's been cool to make friends with some guys who have really been fishing 5-10 years, and catch them that way. That's like a what do you call it? Like a rite of passing or something like that. If you get accepted by them. So
it's a tough group to please too. I don't hear anything.
Yeah, and they have rhyme to their reason, but yeah, absolutely.
I respect it.
Yeah, don't ever go to their spot or, God forbid, cross their line or something like that, especially if they don't know you. But when you get to know all those guys, they're just some of the nicest guys too. So
the best way to meet them is probably through tournament fishing too, huh? You would think maybe.
Yeah,
kind of.
That's how. So I met a couple of them that way. That's how I know of Josh and Frank. But the guy everybody knows, 253 caster. I don't remember. I seen him at Lake Powison one time, and then we followed each other on Instagram. And then over time, his name's Brent, and start asking him questions. Another guy who's really good at swim baits who left to move to Colorado. His name's Brian Speller. There's a bunch of guys. Those are the ones that I would say, I'm friends or acquaintances with. I don't know his name, but his Instagram is Get Bit or Die Trying. I can't believe I forgot his name. But he's a really good guy too that I've been chatting with. But anytime I can get someone who I believe is better than me to respect me enough to share knowledge, that's huge. That's huge for me.
It's definitely, you have to earn that for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
Do you guys have a championship event or just AOI points?
So off the books, even though this is a recorded thing, yeah, we do. We the top 10 fish against each other in it doesn't really count for anything. We don't give out money. We don't do the tournament banners. We don't have a permit for it. But we go to an undisclosed lake because you can only get 7 permits a year per club. So we call it the Classic, of course. The top 10 anglers fish against each other. And it's solo, no teams.
Cool.
So that was pretty fun. I got my second year. I placed 9th in Angler of the Year. I got to fish in it. And then last year, I think I finished 12th or 13th. Didn't fish in it. This year, it's pretty much a lock that I'll fish in it, but it's fun. It's just one-on-one. It's almost like a wildcat tournament, just a bunch of friends because it's unofficial because, we don't have more than 10 boats out there and just some friends fishing together is what it is for a friendly competition.
Friendly duos. Not even duos, you guys are all separate. So when you pick your teammate, do you guys have to be the same team for the rest of that season, or can you switch?
Not at all. So Sean and I just been friends. I've been friends with him since 2012. So that's why I fished with him. And actually, he knew a lot more about bass fishing than me when we first started. So we kind of learned together. I learned a lot of what I know from him. So that's why I fished with him. But a couple of years ago during the opens, we'll bring somebody else. I fished with somebody else during the opens a couple of years ago, and so did he. But you can split up anytime. But this year, because we've done so well, I don't think we'll be splitting up this year. But if we had started the season with a couple of bad tournaments, we might have just split up just for fun, not out of beef or anything, but just to kind of bring somebody in. But it's if you fish a couple of years of tournaments with a partner, it becomes very important who you fish with because you can't be on a boat 8 hours a day with just anyone. Fishing aside, And then there's even arguments that happen. You got to be able to like, it's like a relationship. You got to be able to like fight well with each other, compromise. So it's pretty funny.
That is funny. Gotta do the whole
Yeah.
relationship thing at home
We'll
and on the
alternate
water.
who's driving. We'll alternate who's going to pick spots. And like, you have to like treat it like a real relationship and like care about what the other guy thinks and shit like that. And it's like, oh yeah, I have to like care about what you think. I forgot. My bad.
And I gotta
Your
catch
turn,
fish
please.
too.
Yeah. It is tough. We could talk about that for a minute. It's really tough to fish in the back of the boat, dude. Like you got to learn how to left hand skip and all this shit. And
Yeah.
so we'll take turns a little bit driving. He mostly drives, and a couple tournaments out of the year we'll take my boat. Like American, we'll take my boat. But it's a different ball game. It's like by the time you get to cast into you see a juicy spot coming up ahead. Guy's gonna put his jig right there twice before you get to throw at it.
Is that the common courtesy, or do you like have to restrain yourself from casting there?
No, we used to just stay on our own side of the boat and this and that. But we like a lot of the times we'll stand next to each other on the front, and if I get that spot before him, it's like there's no beef about it. It's just I got there first. He'll be like, "Oh, you stole my cast." I'm like, "Yeah." So we stand next to each other, and we will cross each other's lines like all the time. And it just takes years of fishing together to really get to that level where it's okay to stand next to each other and cast at the same line. But we'd almost never snag each other, maybe once a day. But
Wow.
I stand at the front and try to get the best spots in addition to him too. And then the only problem is skipping. He'll swing to the right, and when he wants to skip something, I'll back up, and I'll have to because we always go the way that he's comfortable because he's driving. And so I've had to learn fairly successfully to left-handed skip, and it's pretty tough because you got to go with your backhand and skip it under there.
I couldn't do it. I'm not that talented with my left
You just got to fail like 80 times, and then you'll start to get one or two, and then eventually you'll get better at it. But it's just like anything, just like time failing.
That's awesome.
That's
It's
fishing
true.
in a nutshell. A lot of failure, then you get one.
Yep. It's life.
Yeah, facts. So,
I think that's it. You got anything else you want to add?
no, if anybody's watching this and they want to join Washington Tiny Boat Nation, just DM the Instagram. A couple of really good guys are running it. Austin Brown, aka Sensei Swimbaits, Sensei Smalley, and Ian is running it. Corey's helping them, and those guys will reach back out to you. If you have any questions about it, you can always ask me. But couple good guys and a whole group of good guys. So yeah, that's basically it. I appreciate your time. If you come west to the west side, hit me up. I will put you on some good ones.
For sure, dude. I'll definitely hit you up. I want to go catch something big.
Yeah, dude. There's a couple of them out here. I don't catch them, but maybe you will.
They exist. It's good enough for me.
They do.
All right, well, thanks for coming on, man. I definitely appreciate it. I've definitely learned a lot. Learned a lot.
Sweet. I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Keep doing your thing. You're doing a great job. I just started watching recently, and it's going well for you, so I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that for sure.
Sweet, man. Take it easy. Hit me up if you come west.
I will do that for sure. Thank you.
Yep. Peace.